Thank you everyone for tuning in to the Urban Network podcast. I'm the host, Hewitt Pagenstecher, founder of Amygdala Media. And today I'm super excited to be joined by Vanessa Sturgeon. She is the CEO and president of TMT Development, also the co-founder of the Rose City Downtown Collective, and she's on the executive committee of the Portland Business Alliance. Vanessa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. How are you doing today?
Good, Hewitt. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. I'm also a Portland local, born and raised, and in doing so, I could really speak or have experienced firsthand the impact that so many of your properties have had, right? Or TMT Development's properties. I spent time growing up with my family at Fox Tower, watching movies. I've spent a lot of time in Directors Park, eating elephants with family and friends, and even more recently, I would spend time at Park Avenue West, just like stopping into T-Bar, breaking out my laptop and busting out some emails and whatnot. So it's just like kind of amazing, just like the culture that, your properties, TMT Development properties have helped, just like cultivate, even in my just like brief sliver of my own like experience as a Portlander.
That's really cool to hear. I love hearing stories like that. And as it turns out, we just last week renewed Regal Cinemas in Fox Tower.
Amazing. Yes, I
Yeah, we
cannot.
renewed their lease.
Yeah, I get a Regal free movie gift card from my aunt like every Christmas, and I still have a couple to use. So I'm happy to go there soon. Especially as things are opening back up.
Very cool.
So yeah. Anyway, it's so impressive, just like the portfolio of properties that TMT Development has, and it was founded in 1992, and I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about the history of TMT Development.
So, real estate was really my grandfather's third career, and he's the founder of TMT Development, Tom Moyer. So, he started as a professional athlete. So, that was his first career. He actually dropped out of high school after freshman year and had flunked third grade. So, he was, like almost 16 at the time, and he went on the professional boxing circuit. His last amateur fight was a split decision draw at Madison Square Gardens against Sugar Ray Robinson. So he
Wow.
lost to Sugar Ray in a split decision draw, and it was actually both of their last amateur fight. They went on to become professionals. They were actually on the Olympic team together, and the Olympics were canceled because of World War II. So they were set for Munich, Germany, and were ultimately canceled. And he was drafted into the Army. So he went into the Army, worked, that career for 4 years, and then came back and started boxing again, and in boxing management as well, and then rolled into a career with movie theaters. So his family was in the business, and they had movie theaters, a couple in Portland, and he thought it would be a good idea to try building movie theaters with more than one screen, and his family didn't agree with that idea. So they split, and he started building multiplex movie theaters, and he sold that chain in the late 80s. And at that time, my grandmother, he had built the company with, passed away from cancer right around the time that they closed on the movie theaters. They sold the chain to Act 3. So he bought a sailboat and called it the Act 4 and went around the world twice on his boat, was gone for 4 years, and he came back in the early 90s and was bored. So real estate was his third career, and started TMT then.
Yeah, and was it Act 2 or Act 3 later became Regal Cinemas too, which is now in Fox Tower as well.
Exactly. And a lot of those gentlemen that work at Regal now that are in the management level actually started working for my grandfather. So they've been in that business the whole way through, and through the acquisitions with Act 3, and then Act 3 got acquired by Regal.
Yeah, super neat. And what's also really just like admirable about the commercial properties that you have made is many of them have received LEED certifications, right? And that is leadership in energy and environmental design. Like Fox Tower and Park Avenue West are like two of your buildings that have received this. And, that's just so amazing that, you're focusing on environmentally friendliness and consciousness. I'm curious kind of what are the main elements that go into like achieving that certification when developing a commercial building?
The bulk of the points that are allocated through LEED that you need to acquire for certification are acquired in development. So it starts at the very beginning with recycling the materials from the buildings that you tear down to build the building. And it goes all the way through to construction and then operation. So on the operations side, it includes recycling, and we host recycling events for tenants so they can get rid of old appliances and whatnot, and electronics. But the bulk of the points really come in the decision making with the fixtures that you choose for the building, the systems that you choose for the building. And the reality is that density is the most environmentally friendly way to build, to house people and to office people. So just by virtue of being a skyscraper, you have a lot of those benefits already built in because your carbon footprint on a per square foot basis is much, much lower than your average
Interesting.
office
Yeah.
space.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's unfortunate. Like looking over the last year on how the commercial real estate industry has been impacted. Obviously, people aren't going downtown anymore. Staying more like people aren't going to their office. They're working from home. There's been a lot of vandalism and destruction in downtown Portland, which makes the city less aesthetically pleasing. And it's definitely been just hard overall. And I'm curious how you find or how you envision like commercial real estate changing coming out of this pandemic.
The answer that I'm going to give you now is very different than the answer would have been 9 months ago. At the beginning of the pandemic, people were finding a reasonable amount of success with the work from home model. And it seemed like tenants were thinking that that model was something that was going to be here to stay. And what we're seeing now is that there's been really a full pivot there. Companies have discovered that their productivity has been drastically impacted negatively by the work from home model. So, for the most part, people have changed their minds from a company standpoint about what their plan is to do. And they're willing to offer a little more flexibility, maybe 1 day a week of work from home. But for the most part, they want to make their office really inviting for people to come back to. And that includes doing away with the hoteling model that got so hot for a while, where there were simply hot desks at an office and you could reserve a desk for the day and you use that desk, and you know you, you could work in different spaces. People don't want that anymore. They want to make sure that their space is dedicated, that it's clean, and that they know that once they sanitize, it's going to stay sanitized, right? And cube sizes shrunk over the last couple of decades. They went from a 6x8 kind of standard cube size down to a 6x6 with no hallways in between. So, or walkways rather than hallways. And it's created these really dense workspaces. And now people are kind of finding that they just really want to be socially distanced permanently, not necessarily for COVID, but they're just more aware of germs in general. So they just want a little more personal space. So we saw a lot of people at the beginning of the pandemic that were renewing their leases just for a year at a time to try and figure out what they were going to do. And now they're committing to taking more space than they ever thought they would.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't want a bigger office just to begin with? I think all of us would enjoy just a more spacious office with more space in the lobby and our own desks. I gotta tell you something. Like, I definitely, was struggling working from home. I work out of a co-working space that has like dedicated desks and private offices. It's called urban office, but just like providing spaces to that, like that, for professionals, I have seen, and I've heard from other professionals that it's increased their productivity, and that they really enjoy also like the available community aspect of that as well. Um, so you're not only the CEO of TMT Development, but as I mentioned before, you co-founded the Rose City Downtown Collective, which has a goal to restore the spirit and economy in downtown Portland. Can you please tell me a little bit about how that came to be founded and what your goals behind that collective are?
So we noticed as larger business owners as a group that we had access to City Hall and a lot of small businesses just didn't. And so the concerns about the COVID pandemic and the damage to their business, and then the rioting and destruction of the destruction of small businesses during the rioting, it was this multi-layered, multifaceted problem that was impacting small business in a way that threatened to really destroy the fabric of what makes Portland Portland. Our small businesses are at the heart of our city's charm. And those businesses were having such difficulty. The COVID pandemic was obviously really difficult for all of them, and many of them were just holding on. And then their storefronts were getting smashed in and graffitied over and over again. Their merchandise was getting stolen during looting, and they were struggling to survive. And many of them didn't make it. And our goal was to help as many of them make it through as possible. So we're working on helping businesses achieve grants to help them stay in business. We're issuing some of our own grants for graffiti and vandalism and broken windows, because insurance doesn't cover that for the most part. It's mostly, and neither do landlords. It's the burden of the small business. And we really want to make sure that these small businesses have their voices elevated to City Hall so we can speak as a group, we can amalgamate common problems and issues, and let City Hall know what that common experience is for small business.
Yeah, you really make local officials accessible on the Rose City Downtown Collective's website. I was really impressed how you included all the emails and phone numbers for all the local officials and people at City Hall. So that was really impressive and a great resource that you have on that website, as well as information on its downtown action plan, which I believe is like a 5-step plan that's like pretty comprehensive on how to restore the economy and spirit of downtown Portland. So I just want to say that's like pretty amazing how you made all those resources and contact information, contact info available to the viewers. And I'm also wondering if there's anything or any more detail you want to discuss regarding the downtown action plan.
Well, the Downtown Action Plan is something that we rolled out a couple of months ago. It got a ton of attention because I think people were hungry for something positive that they could drive toward and a way that they could get involved. And that was a huge part of the goal, was just to say, here's how you can engage. Is litter important to you and garbage cleanup? Here's how you engage for that. You can donate money, you can donate your time, you can donate your talent. And now we're really focusing on, because there are budgets for the county and city that are coming out in the next month, we're really focused on making sure people know who to write to if they have a particular issue that's important to them. Homelessness is one of those that's really on top of people's minds now. I mean, any poll in Portland will tell you homelessness is the number one issue in most Portlanders' minds with the city at this point. And so the county is setting up their budget right now. So now is the time to activate if you want to see resources allocated for the homeless to make safe places for them to camp and sleep and shelter and long-term housing, that's the place to make your voice heard. So, feel free to go over to our website and find the email addresses for the county commissioners. We're adding a form email that you can use to look at and edit as you choose to get it to the hands of the people that need to hear from you.
I'm really happy that there's organizations like yours that are compassionate about this issue. It's been the houselessness situation has been just a problem for years now in Portland. Before I started my own business, I worked at the Commonwealth Building. I worked at the Big Pink and like internships and jobs. And I'd walk by like the same people every day. It's only become more prevalent as like throughout these last couple of years, especially after the pandemic has provided a lot of obstacles for people as well. So I look forward to like revisiting your website and seeing how I could maybe impact this issue, and I would love to see some of these individuals have better housing and living situations.
Me too, Hewitt. And it's just, I went to grade school downtown. I went to Cathedral. This has been my lived experience for my whole life, is being downtown and around homeless populations. I'm the chair of the board for New Avenues for Youth. It's an issue that's deeply important to me. But the county is the agency that's responsible both in budget and in duties for helping the homeless. And people confuse that for the most part. And I think your listeners would be interested to hear how little control or budget the city has over that. People are very quick to blame city council and the mayor for this issue, and the reality is the county is who needs to hear from you. It falls squarely in their bucket.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that information. Yeah. I also went to high school downtown at Lincoln High School. So I've kind of, enjoyed, the great things that Portland has to offer, but I've also seen kind of some aspects that have been slowly slipping away over time as well. So TMT Development, has a lot of commercial properties. Who are some of the main potential like businesses, or do you see that you might want to fill some of that available space in those buildings?
Portland has always been about local growth. So we have companies that start small here and grow over time. So that's traditionally been the way that real estate has grown in Portland. We don't get a lot of headquarter looks, and I don't expect that to change. So, we don't have the huge tenants like the Amazons and the Boeings and the Salesforces. They set up outposts here, but they're not headquartered here. So that's who we continue to focus on, and really trying to support our local tenants' growth.
Amazing. So if people really want to be able to impact their community, learn more about the Rose City Downtown Collective and its action plan, or TMT Development, how could they learn more about your organizations and make an impact?
Well, you can go to TMT Development's website, and then the Rose City Downtown Collective's website too has a ton of great information about engaging. If you're interested in trash pickup, we created a program and handed it off to the city at the Rose City Downtown Collective, and they picked up the ball in Sam Adams' office and run with it in partnership with Solve, setting up programs citywide to volunteer to clean up along the freeways and in different corridors of the city. The problem is so big now that there's no way that the city is going to be able to deal with it on its own. So we need volunteers to help back the city up in that way. So any way that you want to engage, if you have passion and drive for it, you can do it through the Rose City Downtown Collective's website.
Okay, thank you so much for putting together kind of those resources and that call to action. I really appreciate it. Who are some of the other businesses? Just name a few organizations who are a part of the Rose City Downtown Collective.
There are 300 businesses. It's a very large group of us, very diverse set of businesses, small to large. Um, and you have the Blazers and the Timbers and Zupans Market and Melvin Mark Properties, Downtown Development Group. Um, so URG also, the Standard Insurance, and down to tiny businesses. And it's all those voices that make a collective group that sets the priorities.
Okay, that's amazing that so many organizations and businesses are really kind of rallying together behind this mission. It definitely seems like something that needs to be done. So, thanks for really kind of, being one of the main people kind of leading this charge right now. I really appreciate it, on behalf of just like, just as like a local Portlander myself and someone who wants to see the state of downtown be reinvigorated. So. Vanessa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. It was really a pleasure meeting you and learning more about your organizations.
Thank you so much, Hewitt, for having me.
Of course. Yeah. Hopefully, we'll have you on again in the future as well.
I would love that.
Yeah. Okay. And everyone, thank you so much for listening. Have a great day. Thank you for tuning in to the Urban Network podcast. If you're a business owner or entrepreneur based in the Portland area, register for one of our free monthly networking events at urbannetwork.biz.